And we are live. Welcome everyone to the stream. Thank you all for coming. My name is Tommo. You are here, either live or after the fact. Thank you all for coming. And welcome. Hello Dan, see you in chat mate. Hello Lysander, Whip, Yankee, Heikey, Gert, Fred, Patrick, Julia, Joel, Findlay, Steve, Professor Z, Joseph, Isaac, Lur, Sinner, LD, Taylor, Nathan, Owang, Taylor, good to see you, mate, Mo, Aryan, Tim, Sham, GT. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining me today. We are live, 2 p.m. UK time, to talk about the Dutch Grand Prix. What do we think, everyone? We start these streams with an out of 10. What did we think of this race? Give me some numbers in live chat, then I'll whip up a poll based off what numbers I'm seeing the most. So 7, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8. Okay. Okay, right. We've definitely got, right, rating out of 10. So most of you are either saying 6, 7, 8 or 9. So I'm just going to give them as options. Let me know what you thought. And we'll get an average, an average perspective from what you lot thought of the 2022 Dutch Grand Prix. Which, you know what, like, a track like Zandvoort, typically we don't see great racing. Wheel-to-wheel wise, because it's very narrow. Kind of, you think about it in the same vein as Monaco, not to the extreme of Monaco, but Monaco, Hungaroring, Zandvoort. But actually, I was pleasantly surprised. It was one of them races where we had different strategies, so there wasn't a huge amount of wheel-to-wheel, at least at the front anyway, during the middle of the race, but things did converge towards the end, very much so. So what we're saying, right, 44% of you are saying 7 out of 10, 33 are saying 8, 15, 6. Yeah, that's likely, that's averaging out at probably like 7.5, maybe just under 7.5, which I think is fair. I mean, that's fair. Although for me, I'm actually going to give it not a 10, obviously. No, I've given it a... Oh, they're the results. That's the wrong graphic. 7 out of 10. There we go. Boom. 7 out of 10 for the Dutch Grand Prix. Part of it, obviously, with all the safety car VSC stuff at the end, it kind of changed up what was looking to be a very tight finish. You've got the one stopping Mercedes. You've got the two stopping everyone else. And it looked like there might have been a tasty little battle towards the end. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but it was still exciting at the end for other reasons. For other. Can you hear Minton scratching himself behind me? Do you mind, mate? I'm streaming. Okay, yeah, 7 out of 10 though. A good race. Again, 5's bang average. I thought it was an above average race. There was stuff to get excited about. First lap's always a little bit tasty as well at Zandvoort because you've got multiple different lines that you can take around that track. So you're not quite as restricted in driving it as you would at a lot of other circuits. You want to see Minton? All right, let me grab Minton. Come on in, mate. Come on. The people want to see you. Oh. Here he is. We'll go main screen for Minton. Main screen Minton. Look at this glorious dog. Look at it. Are you tired, mate? He's shattered. Why are you so tired at 2 in the afternoon? I've not even taken you for a walk today yet. We'll go out for a walk after the stream. You just want to sleep all day, don't you? Bless him. We're just getting gates fitted in our back garden, so because he always escapes into the neighbour's garden because he's so like long and thin. He can like go through there, go through the neighbour's gate. But we're getting our own gate, so you can't escape anymore. Yeah, good boy. All right, back to sleep you go. Anyway, this channel is turning into Crufts. Right, I know. Look, it's a multidisciplinary channel. You know what I mean? Only reason why we're here. Right and all. That's correct. That's why he's in the thumbnail, okay? Because he deserves the exposure. Right. Have I... let me just check that I have done everything I need to carry on the stream. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, that's all good. Right, sweet. So, 7 out of 10 is what I'd give the Dutch Grand Prix. Let's have a look at the race results. I already kind of spoiled it. I mean, not that you don't know what happened. But of course, Max Verstappen did win the race with fastest lap as well. So full 26 points for Max, from George Russell, from Charles Leclerc, and then from Lewis Hamilton P4. Big points for Fernando. Big points for both the Alpines in the points again. Chatting to Alonso's... Have a guess off the top of your head how many races in a row. I'm just going to validate the information. How many races in a row Fernando Alonso has scored points? Don't look it up. I'm looking it up just to double check I've got the right information. But go on, have a guess. How many in a row? It is indeed 10 races now on the spin for Fernando. It's impressive, and considering where they started as well, he was just edged out by Esteban Ocon in qualifying. Went out, both cars out in Q2 to score points again. Yeah, when I look at his, so he had so P9 Bahrain, retired Saudi Arabia, P17 Australia, retired Emilia Romagna, P11 Miami, and then it's been points from Spain till now. So very impressive. But we'll get into the details. We'll get into the finer things as we go. First of all, though, winners, losers, dubs, L's. I put the poll out last night, as I try and do, because then it gets a good... We had over 2,500 responses as well. I think that's the most I've had replying to a poll. So, who had the best race, worst race from a driver and team point of view? But before we get into yours, because I like to do mine before I look at the results for yours, because I don't want to be swayed by your collective thoughts. And for me, I have gone with the following. I've given Fernando Alonso driver W. Shout out Albon, Russell, Stroll. Haven't shouted out Max Verstappen because it's one of them that he's driving at such a level, and regardless of, we'll talk about the Mercedes strategy. You can't say Max isn't... You can't complain about Max not being in the mentions when I'm currently mentioning Max, okay? Max is just... It's ridiculous. Like, he's driving at such a level, and that team is working for him on such a level. It's almost like it's too easy to just put him W the weekend. So I've decided to forego Max for this one and put the Spaniard... Because I'm British bias, I've put the Spaniard. Albon, shout out. Russell, shout out. Stroll, shout out. But clearly my Oviedo bias is screaming through. Team W of the weekend, I've given that to Alpine, ahead of Red Bull. Just because I think Checo didn't have the car this weekend. And if I'm going to give team, it's got to be team. And Alpine made the most of VSC and all that to get their cars in a better place. Spanish bias all over. And Mercedes, look, obviously, it's a 2-4. When you look at Spa last weekend, you think, oh, that's a shocker. And then Aston Martin, because Lance Stroll had a cracking race. Yes, Stroll over Lewis. Cry, everyone, cry. Right, driver L of the weekend. It's Daniel Avocado, unfortunately. Kind of has to be. ahead of Nicholas Latifi. Well, I mean, Latifi's just miles off again. I've put Sergio, obviously look at the job that Max did and how kind of far off Sergio was. He decided to keep the old floor, I believe, and didn't work out, did it? Had his spinning qualifying as well. And then Vettel, he also had an incident in quali which put him right back where you consider where Stroll got to Q3. Arguably that Aston Martin, which is part of the reason why I think Aston Martin deserve a shout out for team, is because, you know, I think if Vettel doesn't make that mistake, then I think maybe there's 2 Q3 Aston Martins potentially. Looked like they had the pace at Zandvoort. Magnussen potentially out, yeah, true. He had his incident towards the start. He recovered quite well, but also, yeah, the Haas just, yeah, Magnussen's definitely up there as well. But I mean, I only leave room for 3 other names, so I have to deal with it. And then Team L, I've gone with AlphaTauri. Slow again. And the whole shenanigans around Yuki Tsunoda, at the end of the day, and we'll get onto it, the conspiracy that's flying around. But they should have known what the problem was, and they should have, you know, boxed him and kept him in the pits ultimately. They should have known what the issue was, but they didn't. But we'll see. There's a few of you already spat, oh, intentional as heck. Yuki won Max the race. We'll see. I think the Aston Martin's a better car than the AlphaTauri at the moment. Maybe that's controversial. And then now for Romeo and Haas, another poor weekend. But we'll see. All right, then mine. That's what I think. You lot, unsurprisingly, Max driver W of the weekend. Again, that's completely fair. George Russell 20%. Mick Schumacher 12% of the vote, which he had a good race. If it wasn't for a really bad pit stop, then things could have been a lot better for Mick. Maybe points even. Alonso 11%. Team goes to Mercedes. Again, fair enough. Like, especially after last weekend where it was like dead in the water, it seemed, the team. But much better place this weekend. Red Bull 31, Alpine 22. So a pretty even spread between the top 3, to be fair, who all got shouted out. And then Aston Martin picking up a few votes as well. Driver L of the weekend, 36%. Ricciardo, again, fair, when you consider where Lando finished. 10 places ahead of his teammate, and that didn't change all race. Sainz 24, Hamilton 12, Magnussen 8. I mean, again, with Sainz, it wasn't much of his doing. Hamilton drove a great race, fantastic race. It wasn't, he just got unlucky. Magnussen was of his doing. So I definitely get the Ricciardo Magnussen shouts, and Sainz and Hamilton were more unlucky than anything. Although Sainz was struggling on pace. I mean, at the start of the race, you had Hamilton right on Sainz's gearbox on mediums with Sainz on softs, which was a bit odd. So yeah, there's a factor there for sure. And then, yeah, Team L, you've gone Ferrari, which you get, it's fair enough. 40% of the vote. More howlers. Did Sainz have damage? Sainz's floor got damaged. I didn't know that. How did was that the contact with Hamilton? I didn't know that. A few of you are saying Sainz had floor damage. Well, that does, because it wasn't a big piece of contact, but it was Lewis's kind of front left, you know, did clatter Sainz's side pod pretty hard. So yeah, it's kind of like, you know, what was it in Imola when Schumacher hit the side of Alonso and that caused his side pod to rip off eventually. That something like that could have happened. Everyone booed at Ferrari's pit stops. Oh god. But yeah, I mean, damage like that at the start of a race is inevitably going to curtail your performance, and then he got that. I mean, at least he didn't fall down to P9. It could have been worse. Right, yeah. So that's what you lot, Sam. 2,682 votes deep. So what does that leave the championship like? Well, Max now has a 109-point lead over both Charles Leclerc and his teammate Sergio Perez. Mad. George Russell 188 is only, what's the maths there? 13 points off of the back of Leclerc and Perez as well. Wait, is that right? Yeah, it is right. So I was like, have I updated the graphic? Because you know what I'm like. Sometimes I think I've done it and I forget. But yeah, we'll see. And yeah, it's the Albon Stroll battle. And Stroll has now taken the lead in that one, which makes me very sad. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? There's more rounds to go. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. All right. 7 to go. Plenty of time. But yeah, I mean, we've said this many a time. I think, yeah, obviously get that points lead over 100 points now. You know, like this weekend, I made it. I made that the fact abundantly clear on the last lap. So thank you to anyone who might have watched this weekend. That I was very much Team Lewis this weekend. Again, A, because I wanted to preserve the record. B, if there's any sniff of a championship fight still left, Max needs to be dropping points, and a championship fight is what I care about above any individual driver. And it could have been. Would it have been without the VSC safety car? Still, it's a lot to ask because Max would have been coming up the clappers at the end, but it would have been interesting to see. And I was a bit gutted for sure because I think this was Lewis's best opportunity to win a race. Maybe Singapore. I just think in terms of the characteristics that seem to suit this Mercedes car, maybe Singapore is the next best, but it's hard to say. This Zandvoort has a lot of medium speed corners, which Singapore's bumpy as well. That's actually very true. Snow. That's very true. And that Mercedes has to run so low to the grounds that, like, the Red Bull doesn't have to run as low and it doesn't porpoise as much. We saw that at Spa. There was a picture that Dan, if you're still here, Dan, Engine Mode, follow him on Twitter. He posted of the Ferrari bouncing and the Red Bull just flat as a pancake. Maybe Brazil. Yeah, it's hard to imagine which circuit now Mercedes is going to be strong enough. They're going to have to rely. The good thing for Mercedes, I suppose, is that they are comfortably the third quickest car. And if there are issues for Max and for Charles, you would certainly back one or two of like Lewis and or George finishing competitive ahead potentially of Sainz and Perez because they're not operating at the levels of their teammates. Although I would say Sainz, I think, is a lot closer to Leclerc. He's much closer to Leclerc than Perez is to Verstappen. So yeah, but yeah, that's what it's looking like. Should we get into the race? Where should I? Let's go back to screen now. I'm just going to go back to one. It's this 7 out of 10 Dutch Grand Prix. So the start was to be expected. I was hopeful that Leclerc would be able to make a move up the inside of Max because we saw that for anyone who watched the F2 sprint race on Saturday. The F2 sprint race is on Saturday, Tommo. You would have seen that Marcus Armstrong slung it up the inside of Clement Novalak. Shout out Clem. I had a chat with him on the Motormouth podcast a little while ago. Good lad. Slung one up the inside and was able to hold on for the rest of the race. And Max just he didn't get a better start than Charles, he just got the same start. So was able to capitalise on being ahead and cover that move from Charles and stay ahead. And yeah, you obviously had, I know Ocon made up a lot of positions at the start, didn't he? Other than that, there wasn't too many I can remember off the top of my head. Obviously, you had the Hamilton contact with Sainz, which is a bit sketchy, but everyone was fine. You had Magnussen going off lap 2, turn 2, because he was like side by side with Albon, I think, and that almost saw the end to his race. But then the kind of race settled in a bit, didn't it? It didn't have... There was kind of a fairly... you had certain drivers starting on... Again, you had the Mercedes on mediums, most other people on softs. I think Ricciardo came in. He was like one of the first to come in onto the hard tyre on lap like 12 or something. And... because Alonso didn't make much progress at the start. But he did by the end. Like, they were able to go onto the hard tyre, go into clean air, and then make the most of that. But there was a period where it's quite barren. It was the first exciting bit was really the pit stops, wasn't it? When Carlos Sainz came in, and like honestly, when we all joke about Ferrari, bit of a clown show, like the meme. We've all seen the memes, right? And when like if you just play that over the entire Ferrari pit stop, where the car just comes in and there's three tyres, and then because it's the rear left, the one you really don't want there to be no tyre for, because then the air gun is just laying there and Perez just drives over it. Like, that whole sequence, the fact that Perez ran over the air gun just was the cherry on the top. It just, like it's funny, but also like, I'm just a bit bored of it now. I'm a bit bored. Every single race, it's like, oh, what did Ferrari fuck up now? Pardon my language, I don't usually swear on here, but it's granted. It's just the only thing more consistent than Max Verstappen this year is Ferrari messing it up. That's the only thing more consistent. You know, if you follow me on Twitch, I curse a lot, but I try not to on here, because I can get through life without swearing. Okay, I can do it. Thank you, Daytona. Looney Tunes sound effects. Exactly. Thank you, the Daytona plane. Yeah. You sound like my mum. Language. Yeah, look, it was... And look, it's a mistake. The engineer seemingly not telling the pit crew early enough that the pit stops come in. At the time, they were saying about the wrong tyre and the wrong blanket. I don't think that was the case. I think it was just there was a delay, or it just told the pit crew too late for them to be able to get around. And then, because obviously, if you're doing the rear left, you've got to go. You're the other side of the car, so you've got to get there in plenty of time before then putting it on. Also, question: there's something I've never actually really thought of. In a set of 4 tyres, all the tyres are identical, right? They're like totally identical. So you could put a front left on a rear right, right? Or am I being stupid? Rear and fronts differ. Are they different? Are they different width? I was being stupid. This is the great thing. I could ask a question and then I immediately get about 100 people telling me how stupid I am. It's the beauty of this job. I love it. Yeah, I never really considered that. Yeah. So the rears. So you could have. So the person who was on the rear right could have gone to the rear left first, and then it would have been less distance for the rear right person. Because the rears are bigger than the fronts. I don't know. Honestly, like, tyres are just... No, you probably can't do that either, can you? They're probably predetermined. It's like left rear, right rear, whatever. Okay. Look, I'm learning. I'm not so proud that I would say I've always got more to learn. Okay. There's always more to learn. And you're educating me, chat, so thank you. Yeah, right. Time to delete the channel. Well, actually, when we were on the stream yesterday, when Perez ran over I wasn't sure, right? Like, obviously, it was the air gun, right, that you used to take off the tyre, right? But I wasn't sure if it was another type of, like, when it said air gun, I was like, oh, is that like if you need to, like, repressurize the system? Because that's happened before, where, like, someone's come in and they've had to, like, put air into the side of the car. Look, I don't know everything, okay? I like to think I know quite a bit, but not everything. It sounded like air gun to shoot the pigeons. Look, it could have been. Would have been very valid. But yeah, no, that is a different. That Dan told me very quickly. Put me in my place, but you know what I mean. But yeah, the Ferrari pit stop was as much of a clown show as that last 2 minutes of this stream was. So yeah. That was some humour. And then we had, what else did we have pit stop wise? So we had, it was a bit later than that, we had was it Vettel coming out in front of Hamilton and the scrap, just like, that was later on, wasn't it though? Yeah, you had the science unsafe release as well, which obviously Ferrari are saying that that's harsh because they let him out at technically the right time, but because McLaren pit crew were out there, it takes longer because it's such a tight pit lane. You have to, like, hook it left and go a bit slower. But you know that, like, Ferrari, ultimately, it's still a penalty, even with those caveats, because you know it's Zandvoort, you know the pit lane's narrower, you know that, you know, there's McLaren crew there waiting, so you know it's going to take a little bit longer. So yeah, that's just the way it is. But yeah, Vettel got the blue flags, and again, you know, when you saw Hamilton and Perez scrap him, and Vettel came out, obviously the immediate's like, Vettel, what are you doing? But obviously those rearview mirrors on these F1 cars aren't very big, hence why they were testing. And if you saw at practice, they were testing bigger rear mirrors. And I mean, this is kind of a reason why, I guess, but the team should have communicated to Seb, you know, on exit, you're going to be, because he's got blue flags. So Vettel probably lost more time. If he'd slowed up earlier and just let them straight past, he probably would have lost less time than slowing down later on and still, like, looking in his rears, because Hamilton and Perez are all over the back of him. So yeah, that was a bit of an L from Aston Martin for sure. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else in terms of, before we get on to because again, there were a few, like, again, Alonso making moves kind of through, but again, it was more for the VSC. So I think we've got to talk about Tsunoda, haven't we? We've got to talk about Tsunoda. And thank you, Louis, for the €5, mate. How do you rate Drogovic? That guy is in his third season, but he's only 22 and showing amazing consistency. True. Now look, Tao Pourchaire, before we get into Yuki, Tao Pourchaire has been very good this year. He's had a lot of technical gremlins, which have robbed him of many opportunities for points. He's also made his fair share of mistakes. I think, given how young Felipe still is, yes, this is his third season, but he's still only 22. He's looking really good. Like, I think he's got F1 reserve driver written all over him. In the short term, I think, you know, someone needs to snap him up as a reserve, and then because then when you've got him in the family, you can then see what his pace is like relative to your actual drivers and potentially give him a seat. I don't think he'll get a seat, but I think get him in as a reserve, and And it depends, like obviously, which teams have good reserve vacancies. I think that's his best chance. I'd love to see a Brazilian back on the grid. Of course, that'd be amazing. And I think he's very good. I get the 3 years argument, but also there's a lot of the thing is with F2. There's if you're in a great team, MP's clearly a good team, right? And he had some really good performances in his first year. Then he went to Virtuosi, didn't he? And it just didn't work for him there. And there's a lot of factors. I think the way Felipe is leading, the way he's been, even without the gremlins that Porsche has had, I still think Drogovic would be doing a better job. And I think he's more reliable than I think those 3 years, because he's 3 years older than Teo as well. So Teo's mad promising. He's just overdriving slightly, Also, yeah, Jack Doohan's properly woken up since that Alpine seat became available. He's been driving like a man possessed in a good way since then. But we'll see. Thank you, Skyler, as well. If Colton Hurt comes to AT, do you think he'd be taking Gasly's seat or Tsunoda's? It would be Gasly. If Colton Hurt's going to come in, it would be to replace Pierre Gasly to go into Alpine. Problem is, doesn't have the super license points, which is look. F1 have made concessions in the past. Colton Hurt's clearly at a good enough level. I have no doubt in my mind at all that he's a good enough level to merit a super license. Clearly, in my opinion. So yeah, that would all. If basically what seems to be happening is that if Colton Hurter can get a super license, then he'll go to AlphaTauri and then Gasly will go to Alpine. But that won't happen unless if Colton doesn't get the super license concession, then Gasly will remain at AlphaTauri, and then potentially, I think that's the more I think about it. If Alpine don't get Gasly, then do they go Ricciardo? I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. Right. Oh, that was really loud. Sorry. I'm going to go main screen because we're going to talk about Tsunoda Gate. Right. How do I ask this question in the poll? Do you think there was malice, any kind of malice in Yuki Tsunoda stopping on track? It's just a simple yes or no question. Do you think there was any kind of malice? So any kind of premeditation. Premeditation is a better word. I want to word this very specifically. So you could believe that they, pressed a button to blow the car up, or you could just believe that they were just like it was less premeditated than that. No. Premeditation is any kind of malice to help Max. Right, here we go. We're asking the question. I want to see how many of my my live stream community believe that there was some kind of... Because, it's fair to say it might look suspicious, but do you actually think genuinely there's either like Helmut Marko's on the blower being like, end Yuki's race now, or it's like an unwritten rule that, if our race isn't going anywhere or something's gone wrong, then do what you can to, whether it's through bringing out a safety car or whatever, to help out Max, right? Let's have a look. So 10% of you think yes. 90% of you. 80 to 11% of you think yes. Thank you, Matthew, by the way, for the Aussie 7.99. Appreciate it, mate. Good day. Cheers, Tommo, you legend. Fair play to Tom Stallard after the checkered flag. Yeah, man, we'll talk about that. It's a sad situation, but we will talk about that. 11% of you think there was some kind of malice there, it seems. And thank you, Lotonos, for the €5. Why would Red Bull risk the 98-point gap in the championship for that SC when Verstappen already won his home race and faced disqualification? That is part of the counter-argument for sure, as to why there wasn't anything going on. Right, so you've said 11% of you think there is. I'm very much with the 89% here. I don't for a second believe that there was any kind of premeditation to what happened. It was a weird incident, all right? So Tsunoda, and you know what? I think part of this is that, you know, when it comes to a driver, I think something that Yuki, we know he struggled with that in his first year, and I think he's still, I think there's numerous reasons, because I do think, you know, Yuki is very, is more emotional, I think, than the average driver in the car when it comes to radio, and he can be quite reactive. And I think in an instance like this, he wasn't maybe as clear as he could have been about what he felt with the car, but also he obviously, he felt the tyres, he felt an issue with the tyres, or the wheels, sorry. The team were like, well, there's nothing wrong with the wheels. And he did mention differential. And it's one of them that there's clearly something going on communication-wise, right? Because you don't have to... This was what made Senna. So there was a documentary on Sky Sports that I was watching a little while ago, and it was talking about Tolman. So Senna's first ever team, Ayrton Senna's first ever team in Tolman in like 1980, whatever it was, 84, 85. And it was saying about how what made Senna so good is he was so well able to communicate what he felt in the car to his engineers, because the engineers had no data back then. Like, they just had to, driver drives, come back, right, what do you think? Do you think more camber, less camber? What do you think about the wing, blah, blah, blah. And I think having that, being able to communicate succinctly what's going on, and also I think a lot of the time the team trusts the data more than the driver, and I think where Yuki is saying that, oh, it's the tyres, oh, but maybe the diff, and then they can't see an issue with the tyres, they can't see anything on the data, which sometimes the data doesn't tell the full story, and I think this was clearly one of those times. Now, should AlphaTauri be able to detect an issue with the differential, which was verified by the stewards afterwards, by the way, so there was an issue with the differential with the car. There's no doubt and there's no questioning that. So that is a fact. The stewards have clarified that after the race. So there was an issue with the car. There was an issue with the diff. Obviously, Yuki comes in. They change the tyres. At this stage, they still don't have any. But again, they whether they just ignored Yuki saying diff, because he did mention diff, but he didn't really like. And the only reason I'm trying to like really understand what's going on at the end of the day, right? I'm trying not to like. I'm trying to dissect and be like, what actually happened? Because there's a lot of waffle going on, and ironically, I'm waffling here. Yeah, so comes into the pits. They put on a new set of tyres because they're like, well, maybe there is something, because a tyre can be incorrectly fitted. It doesn't have to just fly off straight away. A tyre can be slightly incorrectly fitted. Alonso's had that in Austria, didn't he? Where he was like, oh, we're pitting again. And he didn't want to say that the tyre was loose. The wheel was loose, but the wheel was loose. I'm pretty sure he mentioned diff before he came in the first time. 11. What is this 11% mean that's begun? I'm pretty sure he did mention diff because I watched it back. But yeah, and then obviously they send him out again. Yuki's still like there's something wrong with the car. Now AlphaTauri should be able to diagnose. They shouldn't have sent him back out. Like they should know that there's an issue, but they didn't. And then obviously they send him out, and he stops. So again, for this conspiracy theory to hold weight, which it is a conspiracy theory, by the way, because people say, oh, it's not a conspiracy. No. If you look up the definition of conspiracy, it's when things are done in secret, because AlphaTauri aren't sitting here and being like, oh yeah, we purposefully made Yuki stop to help Max. No. If they are doing it, which I think's not true, like, to me, it's like, it's not even remotely, it's not going to be true, right? Clearly not, right? But whatever. Right? If you think it is, fine. But it has to be a conspiracy theory because they're not saying it. So it is a conspiracy theory. Suspicious? Sure. And this is the problem as well, right? When you've got two teams that are owned by the same company, then when something happens to one that favours the other, AlphaTauri, they're owned by the same people. But you know what? 2010, Abu Dhabi, right? You might not watch the video because barely anyone watched it, but thank you to everyone who did. Season finale. Who's Fernando Alonso stuck behind? Vitaly Petrov. What car is Vitaly Petrov driving? A Renault. Which engine powers the Red Bull? Renault. This is the thing, right? Red Bull and AlphaTauri, they operate independently, but they are owned by the same company. So there's clearly a tie there. Haas and Ferrari, they're not owned by the same company, but there's clearly a very strong tie there, right? This happens in F1. There are connections between teams. And this is one of them where correlation does not always equal causation. Just because Yuki breaking down benefited Max does not mean it was done on purpose. And there needs to be, for me, to make that assertion seriously, and to seriously believe that, there needs to be way more, because it doesn't even make sense. Like, if this is for a title fight, right? If this is right at the end of the season, title fight, like, why aren't like Gasly and Tsunoda chucking themselves into Lewis at every possible opportunity in 2021 when there's actually a title fight on the cusp? No. So why would they do it now when it's for, like, he's already got like a 93-point lead? It doesn't make any sense. Not to mention as well, like, AlphaTauri were, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but having like watched the 11% wants to move on. No, I'm going to convince the 11%. That I'm pretty sure they were running like 11-12 at some point. Tsunoda, Gasly. Did you hear my voice just crack then? I'm pretty sure they were running like 11 and 12. So they had something to fight for. Obviously, yes, Yuki pulling over. But again, so to what extent do people believe that? Look, it's one of them that I think there was just negligence, a degree of negligence there. Maybe if it's not showing up on the data, it's not showing up on the data, and they didn't really listen to Yuki, but then Yuki didn't communicate it as clearly as he could have. New conspiracy: Tommo's being paid off by Red Bull 11%. Well, guess what? I'm not drinking Red Bull. I'm drinking the best ginger beer, Old Jamaica. Banging ginger beer, mate. There's a Macro quite near us, and we bought a massive 24 can crate. It's great. Perez is 11. Oh, Perez is number. Yeah, people said, look, people are entitled to believe what they want to believe, right? Okay. Ultimately, I think it's a ludicrous assertion, but I don't know for sure. Okay, I will never know for sure. Right? That maybe they did. Right? I think it's a ridiculous assertion to make. But like, come on! I just think that's so silly. Like, I just There's people saying, "Oh, Perez crashed on purpose." Yes, because then Lewis and George would have been third and second. But really, like if you're fighting for a championship tooth and nail, but like, what? Why would it's just whatever? Okay. So yeah, I think it's nonsense. But look, believe what you want to believe. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and if you think something was alright, then you're entitled to that, and vice versa. Just let's just all be nice to each other. Yeah, we'll move on. Sorry, I definitely got into waffle mode. That's the beauty of a live stream. I could just go off on a tangent. And also, this did merit talking about because it did the domino effect of this. Because also, what about Bottas? Maybe Bottas is like, oh, he wanted to spurn Lewis because, Lewis beat me for all these years at Mercedes. So I'm going to DNF on purpose to further compound Lewis's pain. Because Max was on hards before that safety car came out and Lewis might have still had a chance. And then I stopped so that he... Oh, come on. But yeah, another Alfa Romeo breakdown. That car is just so unreliable. It's on. I told you the story when I was me and Hannah were driving into Vancouver and there was a massive tailback of traffic. Got to the end and it's a brand new Alfa Romeo Giulia pulled up, like brand new, brand spanking new, and it's already broken down. I was like, bruv, look. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to Audi taking over Alfa Romeo. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Alberto. With the pace of Mercedes this weekend, who do you think will finish higher in the constructors, Ferrari or Merc? It's a very good question. It's 30 points gap, isn't it? I still think it will be Ferrari, but I think it'll be very close. But I still think Ferrari. Yeah. So Bottas broke down. Safety car. Blah blah blah. We'll talk about the teams because then we can dive a bit deeper into the Mercedes kind of head to head. 11% prefer new Top Gear. We won't talk about Williams. We'll talk about Mercedes because obviously safety car. I've got another poll. Right. Safety car. Blah blah blah. All that goes on. Lewis is on mediums. Max is on softs. George is on mediums as well. George decides, because they have to route the cars through the pit lane in order to recover Bottas' car. George then asks to put on the soft tyre. Now, question. Again, how do I word this? Because George putting the soft tyre on got him P2 in this race. So he gained from this. Right, here's the question. Should Mercedes have allowed George to pit for softs? Or if you... Okay, no. If you were in charge of Mercedes, would you have allowed George to pit for softs? Okay. That's the question. That is the question. If you, not me, you, specifically you, I'm talking to you, Scott Elder, you. Nah, everyone else as well, please. If you were in charge of Mercedes, would you have allowed George to pit for soft? So George made the call. He was like, this tyre's like cold, like I need soft tyres, I'm going to have no pace. Lewis did not pit. He was leading. It was Lewis, George, Max. George pits, then comes out behind Max. That's 22%. We're going to start a new one. 22% of no wheel knowledge. So, if I was... Right, okay, I haven't even thought about this. So, if I was in charge of Mercedes, would I have allowed George to pit for softs at that stage? what do I think? Because pitting George for softs deletes any opportunity of Mercedes winning that race. Which it obviously did in the end because Max just walked past Lewis. Because, look, I think Mercedes are in a position, and Toto Wolff said this after, that fighting for P2 in the Constructors, they're not going to give a toss about that. They don't care. What Mercedes want, far more than a P2 in the Constructors, is a win. And specifically a Lewis Hamilton win, right? I don't think they would deny that because the record, which I would love to see carry on, winning in every single year of your career, I'd love to see that carry on. I think there was an opportunity there. The way the dice was rolled with the VSC and the safety car, it made that way more unlikely. But if you stay both cars on mediums and Max is behind on softs, there's at least an opportunity for George to do what Perez did to Hamilton at Abu Dhabi last year and really get the elbows out and really inhibit and slow Max down. I think that was fair game in 2021 with Perez and Hamilton, and I think that would have been fair game yesterday. Now, obviously, people saying both or none, but then Max is already on softs. They were scrubbed, weren't they? There were used softs that Max was on. I don't know did Mercedes have fresh softs? I'm not actually sure. But if they'd both stopped and double stacked, then you would have had Max, Lewis, George, all on softs, safety car restart. No fresh softs, yeah. No one had fresh softs. The 24%, it's up to 24 now. It's one I'm honestly really split on. I'm really split because I do think that, yeah, but if they had pitted both and then both on soft tyres, could they have challenged Max? Could Lewis have challenged Max with that extra bit of straight line speed that the Red Bull seemed to have? It's tough, man. I'm really split. I know most of you think no, but I'm actually quite split on it. If I was in charge, because obviously Lewis felt hurt. He felt upset that George was on the soft and then obviously had the pace to get past him. But Mercedes rolled the dice. And also, there was some information that came out. If you haven't watched the race did a video, came out this morning. Always plug the race because the race, I think they're fantastic what they do. And talking about the Tsunoda incident and then also talking about Lewis. Basically, they were saying that apparently Lewis was in the wrong engine mode when he restarted. That is according to the race. Lewis was in the wrong engine mode on the restart, which I didn't know about until I watched that video. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you didn't know about that. But if the race say it, then it's probably true. Yeah, apparently he was in the wrong engine mode on the restart, which was why Max was able to fly past so convincingly. Which, yeah. Look it up for yourself if you don't believe it. Like the sources look pretty legit. So yeah, that did. Now, do I think that would have made a difference? You could see the pace was nowhere. The fact that Leclerc got past Lewis so quickly as well. Would that have made a big difference? In the end, probably not. Swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I think he would have still got passed by Max, even if it wasn't for the. But Look it up for yourself if you don't believe it, and then you choose the sources you want to believe. I think the race are sound, and I think they're very legit. So I choose to believe that source, but that's up to you. Wrong engine mode could be on bonnet. Maybe. Again, look, I don't know. All that they've said is that he wasn't on the optimal engine mode to restart that race, because Max did go past very easily. Like, even I was surprised. I was watching. I was just like, how the hell's he gone past so easily with no DRS as well? You got to remember, no DRS for 2 laps. But yeah. Right, I'm going to end that poll now. But also, what I will say is that George Russell made the correct call by himself, okay? It's on the team to say, if they want to say, no, George, you're not pitting, you're staying on mediums, you're going to be rear gunner, you're going to defend Lewis against Max, right? If the team wanted to do that, they're entitled to do that, okay? Again, Red Bull did that with Perez to defend against Hamilton in Abu Dhabi in 2021, which ended up paying dividends in the end. I'll get into that. But that clearly made a difference towards, because, you know, the amount they helped that held up Lewis, that could, the butterfly effect of that could change everything. Mercedes would have been entitled to do that, to go for a race win, the one race win of the season, to get Lewis's, you know, his 2022 race win that looks like it's going to elude him. They're entitled to do that, but George made the right call by himself. And that's all you can do as a driver. You can't be expected as a driver to think about, oh, what's best to make my teammate win. The team have to impart that on you and tell you. You can agree you can say before the race, like, I'm going to play the team game, but you can't expect the driver during the race to be like, oh, I'd like to go on softs, but would that spoil, like would that, you know, make Lewis more susceptible to attack by Max? George has just got to take care of himself. Like, all the drivers have to. You have to just take care of yourself, and then it's up to the team to be like, yes or no. And the team said yes to George, which did take away. I was watching it as well, and it was like, because George wasn't able to really close up on Max at all, because obviously when they pulled away, Lewis wasn't going quick enough. It seems to be because he was in the wrong engine mode. But then you got Max going like the clappers. That gap between Max and George was nowhere near close enough for George on the soft tyres to attack Max and danger him at all. But yeah. Thank you, AZSL, as well, by the way, for the Canadian, mate. Appreciate it. Not only did Verstappen fly by Hamilton, he even had to slow down to not get past Hamilton too early. True. Very true. Yeah, Verstappen almost passed Hamilton before the start-finish line, because he had that much of a delta in pace. Imagine if Max had passed Lewis before the start-finish line. What would have been the... Does anyone know what... Is there like a standardised penalty for that? Or would it just be like, just give the position back and then crack on? Is there like a 5 second or just a return? Surely give back the position. Surely it would just be give back the position. Give back the position would be the correct penalty for something like that. A 5 second would just be like, what? Just let them get back the position and just crack on. That would have been mad. That would have been scenes. That would have been hilarious. Okay. Because this is the thing, right? With this Max Lewis stuff, for the overwhelming majority, a lot of the time I'm just sitting back and just enjoying the show, mate. Because I don't really have a horse in the race. I like them both, you know? I think that's the thing with F1. It gets very partisan, but I think most F1 fans are F1 fans before they are driver fans, you know? Then George win, maybe. But yeah, look, it was one other thing I wanted to mention as well with George and Lewis is, right, basically when again watching live on the last lap, check it out. George coming up to the back of Lewis, George on the soft tyres, big pace advantage, going for the move, and watching that at first, I was like, "Oh, I think Lewis has moved a bit late there." That was my initial impression from George's onboards. But then they showed the aerial shot, and then I was like, George didn't really... Like, Lewis was just kind of blending to the right. George didn't firmly kind of move fully right and be like, I'm going past on the right. So actually, it could have been a bit clumsy. Obviously, there wasn't an outcome. But if they had made contact, if the Mercedes... Is that worth asking? Because they didn't make contact. I think it's one of them that it was on the margins. I think there was clearly a bit of a miscommunication there. And they're going so fast through that section as well. That's like the fastest part of the track, and it's a fairly sizable straight as well. No, there's not really. Again, I watched it back after, and I was like, actually no. Like, I think from George's onboard, it looked like Lewis moved late, but actually, I don't think he didn't really move. He was just kind of blending to the right anyway, and George just kind of misinterpreted it more than anything. So I don't think there was too much fault on either end. We'll see. Thank you, Guy, mate. Appreciate it. About the time you got a result. Monza next week, mate. It's Albon. It's Albon's race. All right, trust me. Or Latifi's race. We'll see. But yeah, and then obviously Lewis fell back, lost position to Charles, finishes fourth. George finishes second. So well done, George. Smashed it. Right. So I've talked about Mercedes. That's all good. Red Bull Racing, Max, I said this at the start. I didn't put him in my Driver W the weekend because I wanted to shout out some other drivers. Because the inevitability of Max right now is it's frightening. It's frighteningly good. It's frighteningly impressive. And again, like we talk about driver and team. It's driver and team. It's not just driver and car. And driver's part of that team. It's a team sport. I would say it's a team sport, F1. It's a team sport. You can't win without the car, but you can't win without the driver. You can't win without a good strategy. You can't win. Ferrari are proving that. They've got great drivers. They've got a great car, but they have a bum strategy. Good pit stops. It's all important. It all has to contribute. And I think, you see Mercedes pick up 8 Constructors' Championships in a row and do these really good pit stops. And again, Red Bull have always excelled at pit stops. That's always been their thing, but then they've not had the car. They've not quite had the car, but they've had these other components. So I think Mercedes have always been really consistent, and this is the first year where they've, the car seems to be letting them down compared to their expectations, But I just think whether it's Max, whether it's GP, whether it's Hannah on strategy, whether it's like Adrian Newey and Christian, I'm not Christian's biggest lover, but you cannot deny the success that man has brought to that team, and he's clearly an incredible team principal. He just rubs me up the wrong way sometimes. But all these elements have to come together, and Max is proving that. Unfortunately, and I do kind of worry. The one thing I do worry, right, is that this Red Bull car, it feels like Red Bull have developed a car that really works for Max Verstappen's incredibly aggressive and quite unusual, from testimonies we've heard from drivers. There's the Albon's Motormouth podcast when he was talking about how just, Max he thought he liked a pointy front end, but Max is like nothing else, right? You've got this driver, I would love to see Fernando Alonso jump into that second Red Bull just for a few races. I'd just love to see that. You've got to wonder, can Red Bull deliver a car that anyone other than Max can drive quickly? Because yes, Sergio was very good at the start of the season, but that's because they were still learning this car. It's a brand new... I wasn't surprised because this was a clean sheet for everyone. But the more that Max gets on top of this, the more that Red Bull push this car in a direction that they know Max can drive quickly. And yeah, look, Ricciardo back to Red Bull. Not that it's going to happen, because it's not. But I would love to see if Ricciardo could drive this car anywhere near Max. Because you look at how close they were relative back in the Red Bull days. Verstappen and Ricciardo. I'd love to just see it. Because you sort of saw this Pierre Gasly. You know, Pierre Gasly, Red Bull 2019, not good. 2020, fantastic. 2021, fantastic. 2022, it's been okay. It's not been a great car, though. But that's the thing. I think form is temporary, class is permanent. And Perez and Ricciardo and Albon and Gasly are all very classy drivers. But there's something that the fact that, you know, Bottas and Hamilton, you know, Hamilton on top 75% of the time, but Bottas would still be there 25% of the time, would occasionally outqualify Hamilton. Sainz and Leclerc, I think Sainz he's cocked up a few times this year, but I think he's pretty close to Leclerc this year. Much closer than Perez is to Verstappen. Russell and Hamilton now, incredibly close. And we talk about this curse, this Red Bull curse. How much of it is just Max Verstappen being incredible? That's clearly a component. Clearly. But to say that's the only reason, I think, is to simplify a much more complicated thing. And at the end of it, I just want to try and... I just want to understand what the truth is. And I feel like we're seeing now, as this car development moves towards, you know, Sergio Perez is no mug. He's been in the sport for a very long time. He's been very successful. But I think there is the max factor is a huge component, but it's not the only component. And I do like from a constructor's point of view, if Ferrari and what I'm saying, right? If Ferrari and Mercedes deliver cars that are as good, and teams, that are as good as Red Bull, then I think Red Bull probably finish third in the constructors. If Ferrari and Mercedes can deliver a car, strategy, pit stops that are all kind of on par. Because Red Bull don't seem to be able to deliver a car. And it's almost like, it feels like they're... Because Max is so good, it's like they have to, that they owe it to themselves. They have to push this car in a direction that he can get the most out of. But it just feels like this direction is this like in like this freakish direction that he can drive. And we've seen 3 proven, incredibly competent F1 racing drivers get nowhere near. And you can't tell me that this wouldn't happen with, like, again, I just think there's so few drivers who would be able to jump in alongside Max and be anywhere near. Whereas I think there's a lot more drivers that could jump in alongside, do the kind of job that Carlos Sainz is doing relative to... Because I think Carlos Sainz is great, but I think there's a lot of other great drivers in F1 as well. Make of that what you will. I just think there's more to it, you know. Because I think Perez is fantastic. I think Gasly's proven how good he is. I think Albon's doing a fantastic job this year, and Max is clearly, for me, he's the best driver in F1 right now. But also there is more to it. So only time will tell. Right, Ferrari. Let's talk a bit about Ferrari. Charles didn't really see much of Charles, did we? But got his P3. Ferrari seemed to have dropped a little bit. Now, okay, here we go. Is Ferrari's relatively poor performance in these last 2 races linked to the flexi floor. Here we go. So all this talk of the new technical directive around flexi floors, do you think that's the reason that Ferrari seem to have dropped a bit of pace, or do you just think it's a coincidence? Because they did have to change their floor. So there has been a change. Obviously, Mattia Binotto obviously is denying that, but it feels like Ferrari have been hurt most. Because actually, it seems like the Red Bull can actually run quite high and still be really quick. So the technical directive doesn't really seem to have affected them. And it hasn't really affected... Has it affected Ferrari? I think we thought we'd be quicker than they were at Zandvoort, actually. So I think if Zandvoort was at the start of the season, I think Ferrari get pole by a good chunk of time. Now, obviously, a quick quali car and a quick race car are two different things. Like the Aston Martin, not very quick in quali, typically, unless you Lance Stroll, mate. Well done, Lance. But pretty good in the race, and I think you say the same about Mercedes as well. And you're pretty split down the middle. Really poor performance. About half you think yes, half you think no. Yeah, we'll never know at the end of the day, but there has been a bit of a drop-off, hasn't there, which is a shame. And yeah, like you say, Carlos damage at the start didn't help his race, so that probably explains why he was struggling relative to Charles, pace-wise, because in qualifying, he was like 92 hundredths from pole, and the top three were all within a tenth, so they looked like they should have had the pace, but I think the Mercedes was clearly a quicker racing car this weekend than the Ferrari, but probably about the same as the Red Bull. But yeah, not too much more to say apart from they embarrassed themselves a bit again, and we moved to Monza, which I don't think that's going to suit the Ferrari personally. I just hope there's not another high profile cock up. Please not at home. Please not on home territory. Don't do it. Thank you, Augmented Gravity, by the way. I'd love to see Alonso, Seb, or Rick in that Red Bull. Same. I'd love to just see how close they could get. I'd love to run 3 additional parallel universes. One where it's 2022 Red Bull, Verstappen, Ricciardo. One that it's Verstappen, Vettel, and one that it's Verstappen, Alonso. That would be very fascinating to see. But unfortunately, we can't simulate life. Maybe one day we'll be able to. We can capture the world and then digitally replicate it. Whatever. Anyway, let's talk about Alpine, because Alpine had a good race, didn't they? I'm waffling today, man. 1 hour 12 and we're still going. Thank you to everyone who's still here. Like the stream, by the way, because it helps. It helps me in ways you cannot imagine. No, it's just good for the visibility of the stream. It's called F1 Manager. True. Right, yes, Alpine. Magic Alonso. Magic! It's a good race from Fernando. P6. Probably should have been P7 if it wasn't for Ferrari getting the 5-second penalty. Great drive. Great drive from Fernando. Good drive from Ocon. I'm not sure how much of Fernando finishing where he did relative to Esteban was just good timing on VSC. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I know Ocon had a really good start, so you would have thought that Ocon would have finished higher up, but that hard tyre seemed to work really well for Fernando. But again, it's not a bad drive from Esteban either. Esteban almost got P8. Would have been close with the Fernando penalty. P9 in the end. It's a good drive from Esteban. It's just a bit of a better drive from Fernando again. And I think a lot of this talk around. I've seen a lot of people be, Ocon's not good enough. Blah blah. No, let's not take it for granted. Ocon's doing. He's close. He's not at Fernando's level, I don't think, this year, but he's close. And if Fernando is as good as a lot of people seem to think he still is, I don't think we're getting prime Alonso, because I think to say that this is prime Alonso is a disservice to how good Fernando was from like 2004 to like 2012, at least. I think that does that Fernando, because that Fernando was even better. This Fernando's amazing, but that Fernando was even better. But yeah, it's a good result, and obviously a lot of noise around the team. Obviously after the Piastri nonsense, it's finally been cleared up. And but I like the team. I've got a lot of time for Alpine. I think they've got a lot of history to that Enstone-based team. They were Benetton back in the day. Like they were Tolman before that, because they were Tolman, then they were Benetton, then they were what were they after Benetton? What were they between Benetton and then they were Renault? Was it Renault after Benetton? I can't remember. But whatever. I like Alpine. All right. Yeah, and then they had Lotus. Yeah, that's what I mean. They had Lotus, and they've gone through a lot of different faces over the years. But I like that team. I hope they do well. Right, McLaren. Daniel. Five stops. Oh God. Look, it's one of them with Ricciardo. It's like you got to laugh or you'll just cry. Like he's clearly going through the most difficult period by far in his career, and it's a hell of a drop off. And again, like form is temporary, class is permanent. There's still a very, very, very capable racing driver in there. I have no doubt. Right? No doubt. But talent on its own is not enough. You need environment. You need confidence. You need opportunity. You need luck. You need all of these things to come together. I think Daniel's biggest issue is he just doesn't have the confidence. Because if you don't have a confidence in a car, it really punishes you in qualifying. It really punishes you in qualifying, more so than the race. Because in the race, you can drive at 80%, you can manage the tyres, you can... And I don't think Daniel's... we saw it Australia, we saw Baku. We've seen races where Daniel's been able to hang with Lando's pace in the race. But qualifying lets him down so much, and then he's stuck at the back, then he's stuck in a queue, then he can't progress. And it's all because he just doesn't have that inherent confidence in the car, and ultimately, I guess, in himself as well. Like it's a reflection, and it's peak, man. It's like I think sometimes it's easy to forget that there is a human being in the car, and yeah, it's tough, man. Because you have to call it as you see it, right? He's not been good enough. He's not doing the job he's being paid very handsomely to do. But I do, and with all that, it can be easy. I've been guilty of it, of just being like, oh yeah, but he's fine. Like he's got to pull his finger out, blah blah blah, which he does. But also there is like a bloke, clearly a very good bloke, a very nice, kind geezer there, who, like, I think we all like, you can't not like Daniel, you know what I mean? Like, you can't not want what's best for him, and because we've all seen it, and it's just, yeah, it's just sad, man. It's just really sad. It's just really sad. You got to try and laugh through the pain sometimes, because mate, he's one of my favourite drivers. He's been since he came into the sport. You can't not connect with him on a human level. But at the end of the day, Lando's doing a job. And again, how much of you think is this Lando just driving at 100% every single week? versus Daniel being like average versus Lando being average and Daniel being really bad. That's up to you. But I think Lando's something else. I think he's stellar. I think he can definitely be on Max Verstappen levels. I don't think he's there yet, but I think if you give him a race title winning car, I think give him a bit of time and I think he could get to Max Verstappen levels. I do. I really do. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. Given what he's done in the McLaren. From the evidence I've seen, I think he's got the ability to get there. But yeah, yeah, man, it's tough. And that McLaren car, it has been up and down. It's not been the quality of the Alpine package this year. It's definitely not as good a car. And hope for better for next year. Hope for a seat for Daniel for next year. But if I had to put money on it today, I'm saying Daniel's not in the sport next year. Is Lando the successor to Lewis? It just depends how much money Mercedes want to spend to buy him out of his contract. And ultimately, if McLaren can leapfrog ahead of, there's talk of maybe McLaren Audi engine deal, or I don't know. Talking some Williams Red Bull powertrains deal, Williams Honda. Imagine that coming back. But just to say that, Daniel Ricciardo is washed is. All right, yeah, I get the meme. Oh, he's not doing well. Call him washed. Ha ha ha. But come on. There's a lot more to it, and his talent is not the only contributing factor because I don't think that's gone anywhere. And yeah, I think the Porsche Red Bull deal has fallen through. Well, again, when I was chatting to Dan yesterday, he said this Porsche Red Bull relationship's been going since 2016. They've been talking about it. It's been in the works for a long time. But yeah, we'll see. Right, that's McLaren done. Haas. Not much to say. Although Mick did a very good job. So actually, you know what? Credit to Mick Schumacher. Oh, there we go. Credit to Mick. Mick did a great job. Poor pit stop means that we'll never know how good that could have been. But I think given the Haas package, and it's not too much to say really. Mick knows he needs to have a good last 7 races. These need to be good to really consolidate his seat at Haas. I still think he's got a chance of keeping hold of that seat. Definitely. I think they're not in any rush. Why would they be? They might as well see how he finishes the season. You're only as good as your last race. See how he finishes the season and evaluate from there, And yeah, K-Mag probably guilty of overstepping the mark early on. Maybe overdriving a bit at the start of the race. He's done that before when he's had his couple of prangs with Lewis in Canada and at Catalunya. But yeah, I think Mick's got a chance. Whether he'll take it or not, we'll see. Aston Martin. Yeah, shame for Seb, but he did make the mistake in qualifying, which I do think kind of it just kind of ended any opportunity this weekend. But very impressed by Lance Stroll. I've got to say, these last few races, I think Lance has given a very good account of himself. Lance Stroll has got more point scoring. These are just some facts, right? Lance Stroll has more point scoring finishes this season than Yuki Tsunoda. More point scoring finishes than Pierre Gasly. More than Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously more than Joe. 2 more than Alex as well. Same amount of point scoring finishes as Kevin Magnussen. Now, obviously, look. Oh yeah, but points. He's got 5 points and he's got 1 point every time. Okay. I think Lance. We've had a couple of false dawns with Lance. Start of 2020, he seemed very strong, and then it kind of petered away. But what? Lance is still 23, isn't he? He is, still 23. 24 in October. I've been impressed with Lance the last few races. I hope he carries it on because I do think Lance is he doesn't deserve to be lumped in with the the Latifis, the Mazepins, in terms of absolute clearly not at the level. I think Lance, there's a good racing driver there. The money has brought him opportunities to improve and get better, and I think we are seeing that so far anyway. So, well done, Lance. He deserves credit for this weekend. AlphaTauri, they haven't scored points for ages. When was the last time they scored points? So, Tsunoda hasn't scored points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 races. Yuki hasn't. So, Yuki's point scoring lull has lasted the same amount of time as Fernando's point scoring not lull. Wait, has it? No, it hasn't actually. No, it's one fewer race because Spain, Fernando got P9 and Yuki got P10. But then it's been all non-points since then. And then Pierre hasn't scored races. Okay, so Pierre scored points at Belgium, didn't he? True. But anyway, it's not been very. Pierre has only scored points in one of the last 7 races. There you go. There's the stat. Pierre goes, not much to say really. Just not that car just doesn't seem to be very good. Which is a shame. As does the Alfa Romeo. Also, just doesn't seem to be very good. We're not really getting a chance to really see Joe and Bottas kind of perform, considering how, look, Valtteri started the season, he got P6, retirement, P8, P5, P7, P6, P9, P11, P7. And then it's retirement, 11, 14, 20, 2 retirements in a row. Well, actually 3 retirements in a row, because Hungary was a retirement as well, wasn't it? But it was technically classified because he did enough of the race. Yeah. These two, the Alphas have been playing, right? They've been playing themselves as a certain DJ of the Khaled persuasion would say. Lysander, don't get me started, mate. We're not talking VAR. We're not talking West Ham. And then finally, we'll wrap up the stream with a little bit of a love-in for Alex Albon, because another very good race from Alex. P12 in the end, so no points, but when you consider the track characteristics and you consider where this Williams kind of excels, which seems to be in straight lines, it's a howitzer, but it doesn't go around corners. Here we go. Exactly, Ben. Here we go. I thought he did a very, very good job. Just to get to Q2, I thought was an achievement. Then to deliver a P12, I can be very happy with that. The problem is, there's always going to be that niggling thought in the back of my mind, right? Just sitting there, just being like, is the Williams car actually not that bad? And it's just Latifi's really, really bad, basically. Sorry, Nicky, but it's calling it as I see it. Or is that Williams car actually the worst car and Alex is just driving really, really well and Nicky he's not doing great, but he's kind of doing okay. And it's always going to be difficult to say. Because obviously with Alex, we know, he was against Kvyat in 2019 in his rookie season, which is still a long time ago. You develop a lot as a driver since then. Like, Albon's a better driver now than he was in 2019. And in 2019, when he was at Toro Rosso, he wasn't far off Daniel Kvyat. In terms of points, he was not far off at all. So that was a big, decent, right? Now, obviously 2020 and but it's very hard to rate Alex because he was against Max Verstappen and we've seen what happened to Gasly, we've seen what's happened to Sergio. So yeah, I think, I really hope that there's a new exciting teammate in alongside Alex. Nothing personal against Nicky, but he's clearly not shown to me that he's at the levels to be in Formula One. She can have a great career outside of F1, but I'd love to see. Well, it looked like Piastri was definitely going to happen. And that's the thing, with all of this news that's come out about Alpine offering Piastri 1 to 2 years at Williams, that that pretty much confirms that Williams were going to get rid of Latifi for Piastri to come in alongside Albon, which would have been very exciting to see. This confirms that they're prepared to get rid of Latifi. And I'm sure, Alpine would have compensated Williams to take Piastri. Obviously, that's now not happening. But I'd love to see a Logan Sargent. Obviously, I love Logan. He's my driver. I rep in F2. A left field one I would really like to see is Daniel Ricciardo. Because I think, going to Williams might on the face of it seem like a downgrade. But I think there's a project there. And I think Albon's, got this 2-year contract. I think that there's something there. And De Vries, you could say De Vries, but, he's so much older. And I just think, he's at 27 and he's not driven an F1 car in anger before. And I just think, you've got Albon as this kind of really, established prospect. And Alex is like 2 years younger than Nick De Vries. So Drogovic could be a good shout for sure. I think he would be an exciting prospect to see in Williams. If it's just personally, I'd love to see it be Ricciardo. Build that team back up to something great. Just go all in on this project. All or nothing. Final hurrah for Daniel Ricciardo alongside Alex Albon. 2 of my favourite drivers. I would be decked out in Williams merch every single weekend and I wouldn't give a fuck. Sorry. Language again. But I would love it. So it was justified. All or nothing Williams edition, exactly. But yeah, we'll see. That's going to be interesting to see who gets the Alpine seat, who gets the Williams seat, who gets the Haas seat as well. We are done. I've waffled for over an hour and a half now. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Still about 2,000 of you here. So I appreciate you all taking the time. And Monza this weekend. I'll see you on Thursday for the pre-race stream. Also Wednesday, upload. Didn't upload last week. But it's a good video this week. One I've been working on for the script for a while anyway. And I'm excited to bring that to you on Wednesday. So keep your eyes out on your subscription tabs. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notification bell so that you know when my new stuff's coming out as well. Because then you don't have to worry about missing me. You'd be, oh, there you go. Boom. Oh, look, it's Tommo. He's there. Boom. Sweet. All right. Thank you all for coming. To everyone who stayed, you're going to get some Minton content at the end. Hello, buddy. You still asleep? Oh, yes, you are. Here we go. Is the Minton content for everyone who stayed till the very end. You smell like a puppy. Look at him. Oh, what a beautiful boy. Oh, big yawn. Your breath stinks, bro. But it's okay because I love you. Right. Say bye to all your fans, Minton. Oh, look at him waving at you. Isn't that adorable? Right. Cheers, everyone. Stay safe, be well, be happy, stay hydrated. Be good to yourself and everyone you know. And I will see you Wednesday for video, Thursday for live stream. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.